everybody, JC here with another TNI toy review, and today we're going to take a look at the new Game of Thrones Legacy Collection Jon Snow 6-inch action figure from Funko Toys. Now Funko Toys, you may or may not be familiar with. They are known for doing things like their pop vinyl figures. They have a ton of those. They also do a lot of bobblehead type characters. But this is really their first foray into the 6-inch detailed articulated type action figure. And honestly, I think they've done a very good job with these figures, at least from what I've seen so far. Game of Thrones is the first license they've announced for this legacy line of 6-inch figures. They are going to be doing other licenses. Especially there's a big game license that they're going to be announcing next week at Toy Fair. We're also going to get to see the second wave of Game of Thrones figures from this line. So be sure to start checking into TNI starting this weekend and through next week for our complete New York Toy Fair coverage. Okay, so the figure comes packaged in pretty standard window box type packaging. This packaging to me is very reminiscent of what we've seen with things like the Star Wars Black Series, the 6-inch Black Series that Hasbro's been using. Very similar type packaging. You've got the Game of Thrones logo up at the top, and then you've got the figure clearly displayed in the window with its accessories, and then down below that you've got the wolf logo, which is kind of the family logo, crest, whatever you want to call it. And then down below that you've got the name of the character or the figure, Jon Snow. And then underneath that you can see it says for ages 17 and older. Now I don't know if that's really referring to the figures themselves or if they're referring more to the TV show the figures are based on. So, you know, the show itself is pretty graphic, so definitely not something you'd want your kids to watch. On one side we have another window so you can see the figure from the side, which is nice, so you can get a good look at the figure before you actually purchase it. And then on the other side you just have, again, the logo, the name Game of Thrones, and the wolf logo and the name of the character. And then finally on the back you again have the Game of Thrones Legacy Collection logo at the top. We have a picture of the character from the TV show, a picture of Jon Snow walking in the snow. And then on the right side you have a list of all the figures in the first wave. There's 6 figures total in the first wave. And then down below that you have HBO logo, since this is based on an HBO series. The Funko logo, and then it also says powered by Gentle Giant Studios. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. Now, overall, I think Funko has done a very good job, a very solid job with this figure. It's very sturdy, it's got decent articulation, and the detailing overall is pretty nice. Especially since, like I said, this is the company's first attempt at doing a 6-inch line like this. I think they've done a pretty good job. But the detailing's nice. He's got some scruffy beard, mustache on his face. His hair is solid black. The only complaint I have about like the paint is I think the skin tone is a little too bright. It's a little too orangey, not orange, but it's just, I think they could tone down the color a little bit on the skin tone of the face. Other than that, though, I think it's a very solid paint job. I like the shading, how he's got on his cape and on the edge of his boots and his cloth pieces here. Basically, I guess this is supposed to be like snow while he's been trekking through the snow and everything. So I like the nice added touches of the snow shading along throughout the outfit. Now one thing I will note, like the fur piece on the top is solid black. Now the picture on the back of the box does show him wearing a solid black fur piece, but like in the episodes I've seen, most of the fur pieces that they wear is like, you know, a grayish color and everything. I think just to kind of offset the black a little bit, I think it would have been nice if they had made the fur piece maybe more gray than just solid black. He's got He's got the cape, which is soft leather. It's not removable. And then he's got the fur piece, which is a separate piece, but again not removable. Basically, the fur piece is glued onto the cape, and then the cape is glued onto the back. He's got the piece down below his waist are also soft leather pieces, which is nice, so it doesn't prohibit his mobility too much. He's got the belt, which has this little soft piece that kind of flaps down, and you want to be careful because again this is kind of looks like a delicate piece. If you pulled on it too much, you could probably pull it off. The rest of the belt is sculpted on there, but again this little piece kind of flaps down. And then he's got a sheath that's not removable but does hold his sword, which is removable, and this is the one accessory that he does come with. And I will say I really like the detailing on this sword. I think they did a really good job with the detailing. The engraving on the blade is really nice, and then he's got the wolf head on the back of the handle. So I think they did a great job with the sword. Now, one thing I do want to point out, at least when you first get the figure open, the plastic, his hands, are both sculpted open, but they're very tight, and the plastic is very hard. It's not like a soft plastic, which is good in some ways because it does hold the sword well, but getting the sword into his hands the first time can be a little bit challenging. You have to really kind of pull the fingers back to get it to loosen up a little bit before you can get the sword in there. And even now, you see, kind of have to force it in there. So because the fingers are such a hard plastic, and the hole that they created to hold the sword is very tight, getting that sword in his hands initially can be a little bit of a challenge. So for articulation wise, again, I think they did a pretty good job with this figure. He's got a very nice wide range of movement. With the head, you can look left and right, and then he's got good down movement and pretty good up movement. You can tilt. The head's basically on a ball joint, and it just pops off. And then he's got the standard hinged ball joints. Now his arm movement is prohibited a little bit by the capes and the fur piece. You can't really do the arms too far back, but still pretty good. But there is a little, because of the capes and everything, a little movement restriction there. He can get his arms out pretty good. Now, since this just kind of popped off, I'll jump down to the midsection. He's got good midsection bend, but basically it's just attached. It's just a peg that sticks out of his bottom half that fits in this hole in his top half. So it does pull out. So you got to be careful. Sometimes, when you're posing him around, it can kind of actually pop out. So it's a kind of a weird design, but he does have pretty good movement there in the midsection. Again, he can bend down pretty good, and he can look back pretty good. So, it definitely gives good midsection movement there, and then it's got the twist as well. But again, just be wary that it can't, if you pull on it too hard or something, you can pop it off. He's got single jointed elbow, but he can bend the elbow pretty good. And then he's got swivel wrists. He doesn't have hinges at the wrist, but he does have the swivel. And then the legs, again, are basically on ball joints. So he's got pretty good movement with the legs. Again, a little bit movement with the legs is prohibited a little bit by the soft piece, the leather soft pieces at his waist, but for the most part, he can definitely get the legs out pretty good. It doesn't prohibit that. So like, if you have like some type of horse, from a different toy line or something, he could definitely probably sit on the horse without any problem, which is pretty cool, especially with all the cape and leather pieces and everything. He's got double jointed knees. Oh, and he's got a calf swivel, or a thigh swivel, I mean. And then he's got double jointed knees, so he gets really good bending at the knees. And then he's got hinge at the feet with the ankle pivot. He does not have like any boot swivel or anything, but he does have the swivel at the ankle. And there's no knee swivel either. So basically the only swivel on the leg is at the thigh and the ankle. So this figure does stand at about 6 inches tall. Here he is next to the recently released Marvel Legends Marvel Now Captain America. So you can get a size comparison between the Marvel Legends line and this new Legacy line. And then here he is standing next to Han Solo from Hasbro's Black Series. So you can see again the scales are pretty comparable. Here he is against the Bridge Directs, one of their Hobbit figures. This figure is obviously taller because he's a taller character. But I do think if you're someone who collects like the Lord of the Ring, Toy Biz Lord of the Rings, or the Hobbit figures from Bridge Direct, I do think these lines will go together pretty good. Okay, so that about does it for this review. Overall, I think this is a very solid figure, good articulation, nice details, decent accessory. I think definitely if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you'll want to check this line out. And even if you're just like, say, a fan of Lord of the Rings figures or The Hobbit, I think these will mix in well with those. As I mentioned, these are hitting Barnes & Noble stores now and will be only available there for the next 30 days. And then after that, you should start seeing them at other places. Also, as I mentioned before, starting this weekend, we're going to be kicking off our Toy Fair coverage on toynewseye.com. Early Saturday afternoon, we'll be kicking things off with our Hasbro coverage, and then throughout the week. And we'll definitely be checking out Funko and what other figures they're going to have for this Legacy Collection line, what other licenses, and we should also get a look at the second series of Game of Thrones. So be sure to tune in to toynewseye.com starting this weekend and throughout the week. And until next time, I'll check you later.